The Earth itself is thought to be more than twice as old as life on it. Our picture of what it was like 2 billion years ago is of a great ball, about as hot on its surface as boiling water. In time, as the Earth's surface became less hot, the thick clouds round it, from which water went on raining down, got thinner. Then more sunlight could get through to the surface of the Earth. Sunlight is necessary for life on Earth, as air and water are. Life began, people think, in the salt sea, near the land where the waters were not deep. Very small one-celled organisms came into being. The cells in our bodies are of many different sorts, but they all have water in them. Our bodies are 70% water. This water has in it about the same amount of salt, common table salt, as there was in the water of the sea in which the earliest organisms swam. That water was a little less salt than seawater is today. In billions of years, the rivers have washed down more and more salt from the land into the sea. The sea has become more salt. The water in our bodies does not become more salt. Even if we eat a great amount of salt in our food, the body automatically controls how much it will keep in the bloodstream. And the same is true if we let very much salt out through the skin when we get overheated. Then we have to eat something that will give us new supplies of salt. The first living things, though they were too small to be seen, were eating, growing organisms, which divided to become others like them. Under a microscope, a cell looks like a bit of clear jelly with a thin wall around it. Very small openings in the walls of the cell let food in and waste out. In every cell there is a part like a little ball. This is the nucleus, which organizes the work of the cell. Those cells were discovered 2.5 centuries ago. It is only in the last 100 years that knowledge of the work of the nucleus has developed. It is this nucleus which keeps the cell working at what has to be done. It is to the cell what London is to Britain, New Delhi to India, Beijing to China. It is the seat of government. All living things are developments from these one-celled organisms. They have developed step by step, through change upon change from these first simple living things. Our bodies and the bodies of the plants and animals we see about us are highly complex in their structure. They have in them millions of cells, some doing one sort of work, some another. Every different cell has its own sort of work to do. What do the words simple and complex mean? The greater the number of parts a thing has, the more complex it is. The smaller the number of parts a thing has, the simpler it is. Which of these is the more complex? The more different the parts of a thing are from one another, the more complex it is. The less different the parts of a thing are from one another, the less complex it is. Which of these is more complex? The more the parts of a thing need one another, the more complex it is. Take one little wheel out of a watch, for example, and see if the other parts can do their work without it. Which is more complex? A stone or a plant? The leaves, the flower, stem, and roots of the plant work together to keep it alive, but each does a different sort of work, and each is dependent upon all the others. The work of each part is different. The parts of a stone do not work in this way for one another. A stone is a much simpler thing than a plant. Any living thing, however small or simple it may seem, is far more complex than anything which has no life. People are the most complex of all organisms, far more complex than any plant. We would not go on living, but would die if the millions of cells in our bodies did not work together in their different ways, each doing its own sort of work. The cells are dependent upon one another, and we are dependent upon ourselves. The picture below shows what the word dependent can mean. The girl in the middle is dependent on both men to keep her from falling. The man who has been holding her feet is letting go as the other man takes hold of her hands. She has been dependent on the first man. She will be dependent on the second. Their act depends on timing.